Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to build full-stack applications using Blazor. Blazor's name comes from the addition of browser and razor. Blazor is developed by Microsoft and completely open source. It gives an option to developers to make front-end object-oriented. It became available with .NET Core 3.0 and uses C# 8.0. Blazor uses dependency injection technique, which makes it a lot easier. It supports single-page applications, and Blazor also has something called WebAssembly, which makes the application run on the client's browser. Start by selecting Blazor app template inside predefined Visual Studio templates. We click Next. Now, let's name our project. I named this project as Blazor Tutorial. Let's click Create. Now, we don't have to do any other configuration here, but I just like to talk about Blazor Server App. Now, Blazor has two sides. One is Blazor Server App, one is Blazor Client App. In this video, we are going to learn about the Server App because the Client App is in the alpha stage right now. Let's click Create and wait. After the project opens, you can see under the Solution Explorer there are some predefined classes and pages. Now, in this video we are not going to use most of them, so we start deleting them. Now, as a side effect, there are places which these classes are used. We have to delete the references of them as well. Now we are going to empty out the Now menu under the Shared folder. Save the project. Now let's see how it does look like. Run the solution. As you can see, it's just a hello world under the index page. It says welcome to your new app. We are not going to change much from here, but we are going to certainly add something. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, we are going to make a full stack. So we click on the Solution Explorer, click the solution, add new project. We are creating a .NET Core API project. ASP.NET Core Web Application. Next, let's name this Blazor Tutorial.api. Let's hit Create. Choose API and Create. In this way, now we have an API project. Now let's get back to Blazor Tutorial, our first front-end project, and create a page. We create a page by right-clicking on the Pages folder. Under the Add tab, we choose the New item. Now, we choose the razor component, and let's name this. Actually, leave the page. As you can see, now we have a user login razor component. Inside this component, we will take user login information and pass them to our API. For both front-end and back-end to use the same models, we need to create another project under our solution. Let's create a library project in .NET Core. and we are going to name this Blazor tutorial.shared because it's going to be shared by both front end and the back end. Now we don't need the class 1 CS under this, so we delete it, and let's create a new folder under here. Let's name it models and create a new class. Let's say user login read model. It defines what user has to enter to be logged on into our system. Let's make this class public, and let's define two properties. As you can see, it's fairly simple. Username and password. Now, after this class is done, let's get back to our Solution Explorer and use this project as reference to other projects. Now, both of our projects can use this user login read model class. Now we are going to create a components folder under our front-end project. And we are going to add a new Blazor component for our password input field. Let's name this input password and create. Blazor components has the ability to inherit other components, and we are going to inherit an input base. Input base is the main component the Blazor uses for taking an input from the user. Now there are other components available for this application, but we want to really get into this project, aren't we? Well, let's write inherits input base, and the input we are going to take is a string type. Now, input password component inherits input base component, which has a generic string type. Now, let's create some inputs, shall we? Input and bind value current value, as you can guess, comes from the input base. Let's select the type as the password, and let's give it an ID which should come from the input base as well. Now let's give it a class, form, control, and the ones coming from the parent class. Now there is another condition for inheriting input base components. You have to overwrite try parse value from string method. Now we write protected overwrite bool. Now we have to return a bool, and there are two out parameters as well. We are not going to interpret it too much, we just accept it the way as it is. So we write result equals value, validation error message equals null, because we don't want to throw any errors right now, and we are going to return true. That should cover the input password Razor component. Now we can continue to write our user login component page. We go there. Now let's delete this header and add some usings for our using. We are going to use components. Use the shared, of course. Blazor has a way of taking an input, submitting a form, and this is called edit form. Edit form is one way of submitting form, and it is the case we are going to use here. Now edit form takes a model which it controls if there are any errors or anything else. Now we don't have a model in this page, so let's create a model for Blazor to use. It didn't recognize our model of type. That's because we didn't fully include the namespace. Now it should be okay. Yes. Now, as edit form model parameter, we pass on the user login read model object. Now let's continue to other parameters we are going to use. On wallet submit. This is the method is going to be triggered when the user enters all the required information and presses on submit. Let's call it handle wallet submit, and right now it doesn't have any method named handle wallet submit, so we are going to create that now. Now whenever user enters appropriate information and submits it, this method should be called. Now inside the edit form we add two more components: data initiations validator and validation summary. What these do are validate your model, of course. Now we are going to use some Bootstrap to make it look nicer. Let's create a div with a class of container. Let's add a label. Now let's our input field actually for the username. I want to give it a class of form control, so it looks pretty. I'm gonna give it a placeholder username, and let's give it an ID of username. And now let's binding. There is a two-way binding in the Blazor applications, and we are going to fully use that. Now let's bind user login read model dot username to this input text field. Now we are going to make something very similar for the password area of our page. Remember the password field we created? Now we are using that. And we are going to bind the user login read model .password property to these input fields. Now, if everything goes okay, this class should successfully submit the required fields into our required objects. But now we have one more thing to add, and that is of course a button. Without a button, there's not much use of filling those fields. Let's put the type of submit, and let's give it a class to look, of course, prettier, because pretty is nice always. I'm saying this login. Directly add a function to send this information to the API, but I like to put let's say a layer between those actions. So let's go and create this layer. For this layer to work, first we need to specify the API address we are going to use. Now let's open the app settings.development.json. We are going to create a new setting for the application. Let's name this API options, and under the API options, let's create an address property. It is going to be a string. We are going to give the API address to this property. We can find this address by going to the API project, right click, properties, and let's go to debug. And as you can see here, it says enable SSL localhost 44375. Let's copy this and put it under here, and let's API/here. We are going to be using this address to send out the requests. Open up the Solution Explorer, right click to the data folder, add new class. Let's name this API options. Oops. Under the API option, let's create a property called address. Now let's get to Solution Explorer, right click on the project, add a new folder. Let's name this folder services, and let's add a new class by using Shift-Alt-C, and let's name this user login service. In this class, we are going to have two globally scoped variables. One of them is which HTTP client. This object will help us send and get the results of the requests. And the other one is for reading app settings JSON file from the project. Let's name this properly. Let's select these two variables, control that, and generate constructor. This will automatically generate a constructor which takes two arguments defined here. And let's create a method here, make it async task, and we are going to return a bool login user, which will take user login read model. Let's name this user model. We are going to use HTTP client post async. Now this method takes two parameters, And first parameter, we can write it right now. API options dot address, and let's say login. For other parameter, we have to do some pre-work. Now let's do that. We'll create a new variable named model context, and say new string content. I'm sorry. JSON converts. Now JSON convert is a nugget package we use to convert our objects to JSON and vice versa. Let's add this nugget packet to our project. After adding this nugget packet, we say serialize object, and we paste our object. Now this created string content object for HTTP client object post. Let's rename this as content. Now there are few other parameters we should write. We should specify the encoding which this string content should use. Let's say encoding dot UTF-8, and we are going to use application/JSON. It's important that we specify the media type because the API is waiting for us to pass out the application JSON format. Now we created the model content. Now let's pass on to the post-async method. Now this method will return a response, and we need this response actually. So let's take this as like that. As you can see, it returns an HTTP response message. We don't need the whole response message. As you can see, we're only returning Boolean, so we just return response is success status code. If it's not success, then it's a failure. Now save all project. Now there's a thing we have to do. Because our program using two variables and we use dependency injection to get them, so we have to inject them somewhere. Now let's get to the somewhere part. We open up our startup CS under the front-end project, and let's go under the configure services. Let's take JSON options first, shall we? API options equals configuration dot get section API options dot get, and we want the API options. Now we have to inject this to our project. We use services dot add singleton API options. If you remember it correctly, there are also one another injection HTTP client. Now let's add this one. Add singleton P client. Okay, now user login service is ready to go. But one more thing, since we are going to use user login service in our Razor pages and other places, we also have to inject it to this project. So we say add singleton user login service. Now our injections are ready to go. Let's add this user login service to our Razor page. We come here, Under the usings, we say inject user login service, and let's give it a name. Let's say user service, and we have to add the using part. Now it should be okay. By the way, if you want to check out how the user login page looks right now, let's open the index page and let's delete this and add user login here. Now let's start the project. As you can see, username and the password fields are here. And let's say you press A and press tab, it gives an error saying username is not between 3 and 20 characters long. Remember what we did when we are creating the models? Let's open that up. As you can see, we defined minimum and the maximum length, and if it's not in this range, the browser, the project should give us an error, and it does that exactly. Now let's give it some password, and it gives an error too. And now you can close this, and let's get back to our coding part. Let's open our user login page and continue. Under the handle wallet submit, we say var result equals user login read model. Nope. What was the name? User service dot login user, and we pass on the user login read model. Now let's put a breakpoint here and login user, see what it does. Let's put some random things here, press login, and here we are on the breakpoint. We got a user model with specified properties and our model content, which should be accurate. Now we want to post this, but our backend is not ready for this application yet. Now let's create our backend. Let's go to Solution Explorer, go to API, let's delete the weather forecast and the controller for the weather forecast, because we are not going to use those. And right click to controllers, let's add new item, and we are going to add API controller class. Let's name it user controller. Now there's a bunch of stuff inside, but we are not interested in any of them. We are going to create our own. Now let's say HTTP post, because we are going to send out post request, and we get a root of login. Now let's say public, and we are going to return our action result login, and we are going to take login read model. Let's say model. Now from body implies that we are going to accept it as a JSON body, not from the query. But I'm not going to go further in that. Just follow me as much as you can. Let's say if model dot username is equal to hello, and model dot password is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we say return OK and success. If it's not, we return, let's say, bad request, and let's give it fail. Now let's save this all. Now I'm going to show you something. Let's click on the solution, enter properties, multiple startup projects. Let's get start and click OK. Now we start the project, both of them will start. And one thing I think I forgot is it should be user/login. Let's start the projects. And we might also want to debug the API part, so I'm just going to put a breakpoint right here. Now let's open up our browser. Here we go. And let's fill out something. Try login. Of course it's not going to work because of the errors. Now let's put something gibberish here and click on login. Login user method is triggered, so we can say we're on the right path. Let's continue, and we don't have a result yet because it's an asynchronous method, so the result has to wait. Now we are in the API part. Let's look at the model we had. Successfully retrieve the model. Okay, now we are going to control if it matches the pattern. Of course it is not, and we return a bad request. And done. Now we managed to accomplish connection between API and the front end. Now let's properly show the messages on the front end. I open up the user login page. Let's see. I'm going to make this an asynchronous method, so I can get the results here. Now let's check the results. If results, we're returning true or false if you remember the login user method. We are going to return if it's successful or not. We don't care about the message or anything else passed on by the API. So let's say just success. If it's not successful, of course we are going to write fail. Now we don't usually see the console messages if we are working on the IIS, and we can easily change that. Let's go to our front-end project and change this to Blazor tutorial. It's its own name, and if we start to compile this, it's gonna work on a console application, and it's gonna use the console application, not the IIS. In this way we can see the console messages and other stuff. We don't need IIS in .NET. It's a .NET Core specific ability. Now let's go and reselect our projects. Multiple startup projects, starts and start. Click OK, and let's start them. And I'll put a breakpoint here. As you can see, it opens in console application, but the API still runs on the IIS, and we don't need it to run on the console application, so it can stay that way. Let's open up our browser. Let's go and log in. And we can see the user model here nicely, and continue. and we are in the API, and we are going to return the success OK result, which should be 200. We continue. Now result is true, of course, and we write success and continue. Now if we open the console application, and we can see the success message right there. Now you may want to redirect the user if it's a successful login, or show an error message if it's not. Now let's do this. Stop the project and let's remove the breakpoint here. Now let's add a page, shall we? Add new item, Razor component. Let's name this welcome. It says big welcome on there, and it should be enough, except we should specify the page, I mean the URL location which it is going to be on. We do this by writing add page and of course welcome, and of course the slash. Now if we run the project, here we go, and if we go to the welcome, ta-da, the welcome page. Should be enough for our purposes. Stop debugging. Let's get back to user login page. Now to redirect, we have several methods, but I'm going to use navigation manager. We inject the navigation manager right here. And let's name this properly and get to the result part. If we are successfully logged in and we want to navigate to the welcome page, so let's achieve this by navigation manager dot navigate to, and we write the welcome. Test this by starting up the projects. Now let's click on login after successful and correct credentials. And I think I forgot the breakpoints here and here. Now as you can see, we redirected to the welcome page. Now let's do something about the error, fail on login. And let's open up the user login page. Here we go. I have an idea about how the unsuccessful login should look like, but let's use some Bootstrap again. First of all, we are going to need a variable to hold the information if our login is successful or not. So I go invalid login. It should be false right now. And here we go. If invalid login, then we want to show something to user that his login or her login is not correct one. So let's go with alert danger, alert dismissible, and let's hit fade, show with a role of alerts. Okay, let's rearrange this beautifully. Now let's set strong and let's say error user or invalid. Then let's add a button. Close. Let's give a label of close. And the crucial part, click this miss alert. Now we don't have a method named this miss alert, and so we are going to create that, of course. But let's continue on some other thing. We still have to show the button properly. So hidden, let's see, true, as it is. Okay. Now if we were to create a method, private void this miss alert, and we just gonna make the invalid login equals false. Sorry about that. And in the else statement of the login handle wallet submit, we're gonna make login equals true. So whenever the invalid login is true, we should show the user that it's wrong credentials, buddy. Oops, my bad. Just a typo. Okay, now one more thing. Blazor does not update its state. Actually, it updates the state, but it does not re-render in the asynchronous methods. So we have to specify the state has changed, and it should re-render. We do that by state has changed method here. And if we were to run the projects, let's see what will happen. Let's get an invalid login, error, username or password invalid. Now we can close this by click on the X here. Ta-da! And this is for this is enough for this part. I'll show you how to create a basic Blazor interaction with the backend and send data and get data and process that data between API and the Blazor. Hope to see you in the next video.